We begin in silence, the hour before sunrise, among the broken stones of an empire that once dreamed of eternity. Here we ask a question seldom spoken in the modern West. What if enlightenment was once our own tradition too? Before Christianity, before the Desert Fathers, before dogma claimed the miraculous, there lived a philosopher saint called Apollonius of Tyana. He walked the world from the coasts of Ionia to the mountains of India. He healed the sick, debated kings, and taught that divinity is not distant from dwelling within. They called him the Pagan Christ, but to those who looked more deeply, he was something far older, a man who lived what we might now call the Tantra of the West, the union of discipline, wisdom, and direct experience of the divine. Apollonius was born in Tyana, a city in Cappadocia, in the 1st century CE, an age of restless gods and clashing philosophies. From youth, he showed an unusual stillness, a temperament turned inward. He studied under the Pythagoreans, whose path demanded purity of life and harmony of thought. The young Apollonius took vows to eat no flesh, to speak no falsehood, to dress simply in linen, and, most difficult of all, to keep silence for 5 years. He believed words should follow insight, not replace it. Silence, he said, was the tuning of the soul. In this silence, he learned the secret music that Pythagoras had once heard among the stars. We might think of Apollonius' silence as abstinence from speech, but it was more, a tantric austerity of the mind. To him, noise was fragmentation, silence was wholeness. By quietening the voice, the soul could hear what the cosmos was already saying. This practice mirrors the Eastern disciplines of Mauna and Pratyahara, the inward turning of the senses. Yet Apollonius never travelled east as a student. He travelled as a peer. When he later met the sages of India, they recognized him a brother of the same current. For nearly 4 decades, Apollonius wandered the world. In Babylon, he spoke with the Magi about the fire of the divine intellect. In Egypt, he entered sanctuaries where pre-scientists measured eternity with geometry and breath. And in India, he conversed with Brahmins at the foot of the Himalayas about the immortality of the soul. Wherever he went, he sought not new gods, but the unity behind all gods, that single consciousness shining through many names. Philostratus tells us that when the Indian sages asked him what philosophy he followed, he replied only, the love of truth. He listened, learned, and returned west transformed. Apollonius called his way bios, theios, and anthrōpois, a divine life among humans. Not withdrawal from the world, but transfiguration within it. He taught that to live divinely is to live consciously, virtuously, harmoniously, to bring the order of the heavens into the acts of daily life. In his view, each person is a fragment of the universal soul, the psyche cosmique. To align with that cosmic soul is the true ritual, more sacred than sacrifice. Apollonius taught that the first step towards divine likeness is virtue. Virtue is not moralism, but energetic clarity, a harmonizing of the inner and outer worlds. Temperance aligned the body, justice the mind, courage the heart. Through these harmonies, the soul became transparent to the divine light. He rejected superstition and fear. He said that the gods could not be bribed with offerings. They are drawn to likeness, not flattery. And so the philosopher became the priest, not of temple altars, but of the living spirit. Philostratus preserves these tales, not as superstition, but as parables of consciousness. To Apollonius, such wonders were not violations of nature, they were nature restored to harmony. He would have said that the true miracle is a mind free from fear. As we follow his path beyond these stories, we begin to see the pattern beneath them. A teaching about what it means to live as a conscious participant in the cosmos, to practice what he called hotoies theis harmoimenos bios, the life that makes one like the gods. As the noise of empire swelled around him, Apollonius taught that true philosophy is not debate but practice. The intellect must serve the soul's ascent. Knowledge without purification is like a lyre, a harp out of tune. He spoke of the ascesis, the discipline of divine likeness. To study the stars was to remember the soul's origin. To master speech was to align language with the order of logos. He told his students that every human being carries the image of the cosmos inside, and that meditation is the art of remembering it. He saw numbers, sound, and virtue as a single continuum. Mathematics not as abstraction, but as prayer. Apollonius's practice was not what later sages would call magic. He called it Theurgy, the sacred action that unites the human will with divine reason. In modern words, it was spiritual technology, an alignment, not command. Where the sorcerer seeks to bend nature, the theurgist seeks to co-resonate with it. Through geometry, prayer, and breath, Apollonius tuned himself to the living harmony of the cosmos. He said, the gods are intelligible forces of order, and when the soul becomes orderly, they appear. To live bios theios and anthrōpois, a divine life among humans, was already the highest ritual. After his death, stories of Apollonius spread across the empire. To his followers, he was a saint of philosophy. To the church fathers, a dangerous rival. Writers such as Heracles compared him to Jesus, calling him proof that divinity had many messengers. Eusebius, defender of the faith, replied that his wonders were the work of demons. The debate was not only theological, It was civilizational. Was enlightenment to be inherited by faith or by discipline? Was salvation a gift or an achievement of the soul? In this clash, the last light of the old mysteries flickered. Yet thanks to the Empress Julia Domna, philosopher and priestess of Syria, his biography survived. She saw in Apollonius the image of the enlightened ruler, the enlightened philosopher, and in his life the proof that wisdom can walk with power. Βίος, θεīos en anthrōpois. From Apollonius flowed a quiet current that would shape the centuries. The Neoplatonists, Plotinus, Porphyry, Iamblichus, saw in him the model of the divine man. Hermetic philosophers adopted his vision of ascent through knowledge and purity. The Renaissance magi from Ficino to Bruno echoed his teaching that the world itself is divine. Even when his name was forgotten, his method endured. That enlightenment is not a retreat from matter, but its illumination. In this sense, Apollonius belongs to what we may call the lost Western Tantric tradition, a lineage where philosophy, mysticism, and embodiment of the divine form one path. It is a tantra of proportion, breadth, and cosmic sympathy. Its altar is the human being aligned with the living order of the cosmos. We may ask what remains of Apollonius now. His temples are dust, his books mostly lost, yet the current of his thought still moves beneath the surface of Western consciousness. When we practice silence instead of noise, clarity instead of frenzy, whenever we seek the divine, not in distant heavens, but within the pattern of our own being, we live his teaching. He would remind us that wisdom is not ancient or modern, it's perennial. That the gods never truly depart. They wait for minds capable of likeness. Tois, theios, homioumenos bios. And so we remember Apollonius of Tyana, philosopher, healer, theurgist, and witness to a time when the West still spoke the language of awakening, when it had its own tantric tradition. He stands as a bridge between worlds, between Greece and India, reason and revelation, humanity and the divine. His phrase, bios, theos, and anthrōpois, was not a boast but an invitation to live as the gods would live, conscious, compassionate, and, above all, whole. May we take up that invitation and, in our own way, continue the divine life among humans.